Hi, and welcome to our podcast. I'm your host, Howard Drukarsh. For those who don't know me, I've been a successful realtor in Canada's largest market for over 30 years. And in the latter part of my career, I co-founded Canada's largest independent brokerage, Right at Home Realty. In 2020, I retired to start this podcast, and it's been a remarkable opportunity to meet fascinating and highly successful guests in real estate and related fields, and to find out about their careers and get their insight into our industry. Today's guest is one of those people, Phil Soper, President and CEO of Royal LePage and Bridgemarq Real Estate Services, a Brookfield company. I've known Phil for many years, and I know him as an entrepreneur in terms of building a company. I know him as a musician. We played together in charity events in the past. I know he's an avid golfer. I know him and his wife are avid curlers, and they may almost be champions for what I recall. I don't know if they made it all the way to champions. His extensive awards would be its own podcast, which we're gonna hold off. And the charity events he's done would be its own podcast as well. The one that fascinated me is this incredibly interesting guy crossed the desert on behalf of a charity. So that's my introduction to Phil. Phil, welcome to the podcast.
Howard, great to be on, and congratulations for getting it rolling and gathering the audience you have in a relatively short period of time. It's a busy media world out there, and you've found a unique voice. So good on you.
Well, thanks. And you're probably the person who's had more media attention than anybody, and you understand, the role of how media can really help promote anything if you do it right. So thanks for taking the time. I know you, and I know the responsibilities. We're going to try to keep it to half an hour. Okay.
Okay.
So on my questions, the first one I have is, because I think people may not know this. They know you certainly in terms of your role with Royal LePage and Bridgemarq. But before that, what was your career before getting into real estate?
Well, really three parts. I started my career in the oil industry. Mm-hmm. I have an undergraduate degree in business and started in the oil industry. But I always wanted to work in IT and information technology. Mm-hmm. So I completed computer science and started as a systems engineer with IBM back in the mid-'80s. And I worked for IBM in lots of different roles through the 90s in Canada, the United States. I had a stint in Europe. It was great time. The 90s were fascinating because it was, I know you recall the dot-com era. It was really when we introduced the internet to the world of business. Before it had just been an academic construct, but it changed everything, and had a great time. But around 2000, found myself a single parent of a couple of very young kids, 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and IBM wanted to ship me back to New York, and I didn't want to leave. So an old friend from undergrad days phoned me up and said, "Hey, the CEO of Royal LePage is looking for someone to run their relocation company," which was a big deal back in the early 2000s. And I took the meeting, and a few months later, I left IT and joined the wonderful world of real estate. From there, it was kind of a whirlwind, a bit of change. 18 months later, that fellow's name was Simon Dean, one of my great mentors, retired, and I got the nod to run the whole show. So been in real estate a long time now, but I got there through a different path than a lot of people.
It's interesting. My own background does cross through Royal LePage as well. My former partner, or my late partner, Arthur Bartram, and I were both at the Johnston Daniel office. He was the general manager of that office. And I did know Simon Dean as well in those days. So, in this business, the longer you're in it, the more you don't have a lot of people who have those memories. People don't last as you and I have. But
yeah, that's true.
It was
we're sticky.
Yes, we've stuck well.
We refuse to go away, Howard.
And the other thing is, we've both seen, I think, to bring to the discussion technology. prior to the internet, there hadn't been, I started in real estate in the mid 80s. And if you wanted to learn about real estate and houses, you had to go to the office, you had to look at the printed listings, everything was type up offers. So you and I have also gone through technology changes, which haven't stopped, to where the business is nowhere. In fact, when I started, most of the people in the office were older people. As you know, now most of the people in the business are younger people. I mean, it's really quite a different business. And it's, I would say it's been the most exciting time to be in real estate.
Very, very exciting time. And it's a people business.
Right.
Technology has had a lot to do with the changes in our life altogether. You and I conducting this this chat from different locations. This would not have been an easy thing to do even a few years ago. So technology has changed everybody's life, no matter what your profession. But real estate remains a people business, and people like you and I continue to be incredibly important to leading it and to helping people maximize the joy and the success they get from their careers.
Yeah, and the excitement. People, there's a lot of, not a lot, but there is some discussion that, technology will eliminate real estate agents. When I was active in the company, I would always say to new people, because I did a lot of recruiting when I was there, is, bricks and mortar are the product, but you're really just dealing with people and their emotions. That's what real estate is. And once you get it through your head, it's not about how you certainly have to know the inventory, but you have to know how to deal with people. Otherwise, it won't work. So, and you're great at that. I know you so well. What was the biggest challenge when you made the career change from IBM to Royal LePage?
Interesting question. In the corporate world, and I did lots of roles in the old corporate world back, it's over 20 years ago now, but remember it well. It tends to be a bit of a traditional pyramid. You can get flat organizational structures or those that are steeper. But when you're the big boss, people do what you say. You still have to have everybody on board to ensure you have retention, and organizations with collaborative leadership work effectively. But real estate really is an inverted pyramid with the frontline practitioners at the top, not even our team leaders. The actual frontline practitioners run the show. Team leaders are beholden to the team members. Broker owner managers are beholden to their teams. And when you run a big national firm like you're running more like it's more like being a political leader, where people vote for you and they give you your confidence. They have confidence in you, or they elect you in the real estate world by staying, by retention, by attraction, by joining your firm. But you are a servant leader. You realize your job is to enable them, and in many ways to give them the tools and means to be successful, and then stand back and get out of your way. So in the corporate world, it can be more command and control. I say you must do this, and everybody falls into line. In the real estate world, it is, I have a great idea. Let me explain it to you, and please give it your consideration. And if you're successful, they fall into line. So it's influence and cajoling versus command and control. That would be the biggest difference.
And I've spent over 30 years in the business. And I think if you were to walk into a room and say, this is the way it is going to, you're going to walk into a branch office. And I remember Gino used to come to the office when I was at the J&D office. And if he was to come in the office and say, okay, this is the way it's going to be, and everyone has to agree, all those people would be at another brokerage. Because the ego, to be successful, there's a balance of ego and customer service. That's the way I see it. You have to be able to take rejection. It's a big part of sales. You know that from IBM as well. And when you can handle rejection and keep moving forward, and you have the skill set to deal with people, you'll handle this business well. And the more people you meet in this business, at least for me, the more fascinating I find people, the ones that succeed. There's no rule. You can't say so-and-so will succeed because of this. I remember.
It's true. If I look at the very top of the industry,
right.
We have business people, people who are great with numbers, with finance. We have teachers. We have one of the top agents in the Collingwood area for us, and one of the top agents overall, used to be the commander at Meaford Base, Canadian Force Base Meaford, had something like 15,000 or 1,500 troops under his command. So you get these people who are obvious leaders, who are leaders in the industry, and people who were, they were givers, nurses, another category of people. I find people who have organizational skills, people skills, as we've already talked about, and drive tend to be successful. Regardless of their background. Now, you have to be at least competent in that. One thing that really drives me crazy as a real estate professional who doesn't understand the financial implications of these very expensive properties that they are brokering. But beyond that, you don't need to be a finance expert. You don't even need to be the world's best salesperson. If you're a great listener, if you're organized, if you focus on clients' needs, do the right thing, take the high road, success will come your way.
And I think the thing a lot of times that happens in the business is because there's a time money race when you start, right? This is a commission-based business. Depending on the market, depending on all those skills you talked about, you may find that, I haven't had the sales yet. And then the worst thing you can ever do is compromise your integrity, because you'll be out of the business, right? So you have to be able to survive that. The other thing I found fascinating in the business is there are clients, just like there are agents for every brokerage, there are clients for every agent. There are agents that work in T-shirts, and they got clients that love guys that work, and women that work in T-shirts. And they're to the other extreme. There are people that come out of corporate and are very businesslike, and there are clients that want that. So, anybody watching our podcast thinking about real estate, there is no rule on how to be successful. I mean, you've talked about the skill set.
I'll tell you a quick little story. One of the roles when you run a national company, and you've been part of this back in the day, is the CEO flies in, you have a gala, and you parade your award winners up on stage. Incredible differences with different people in different part of the world. So I'm coming from Montreal, where everybody kisses each other. This is pre-COVID, of course, but I truly believe it's probably going to come back in Quebec. So they come on stage, they're dressed to the absolute nines, and it's and lots of Latin joy and celebration and hugging and kissing. Then I fly to Alberta, and that year the Alberta Awards were in Red Deer, and I'm on stage, and I had just given the little air kiss on the cheek to a woman who'd come on board, and another woman comes on, top award winner, did a lot of rural farm properties, big farm properties. And she looked a little stern, and I'm 6 feet tall. She was about 6 feet tall. And she walks up, and I lean in, and she gives me a straight arm. Boom, hits me right in the middle of her chest. Like she didn't want me to come any closer. And I stuck out my hand, like I said, handshake, and she goes, "I'm good." So we spin to the photographer and the crowd, and we're standing like American Gothic there.
Yeah.
A big distance between the two of us, grimly looking out at the audience. So yes, you can be a very different personality. You dress differently. Right. You can behave differently as long as you put your client first,
Right.
you deliver. And I think it really does help to be a bit of a people person. Not too many people that hate people
Right.
are successful in this business, but I bet there are some.
And I think that's the key. I think for me, and going back to the beginning of my career, before that I was in marketing, but that's also people. I always found meeting new people fascinating. Like my wife used to say to me, we'd go away on vacation, Rosemary would say, you talk to everybody, and she was looking to have a quiet vacation. We get on an elevator and say, hey, how you doing? It was just, I know you're the same. We like people. And I think that's a skill set you can't fake. You either like them or you don't. So, and I'm enjoying this.
True. You know what? There are jobs in this world. I think in our research, the work from home phenomenon, because all of our headquarters people have been working out of the office. Our office has been open for some time now, according to public health guidelines in Ontario. But we've allowed people to stay at home until September, when we're expecting them to be back in a hybrid fashion.
Mm-hmm.
For some of them, because we've asked them, we've gone out and confidentially surveyed, what do you like, what do you don't like about virtual work. For some of them, they hated the isolation and they wanted to be back in the office where their colleagues were. For others, it was just a godsend. Not only did they get to skip the commute, which for some people is painful, but they got quiet, they got focused time, and it just lifted them up. So I think we have to recognize that in our jobs, and in our real estate teams, our frontline people have to realize when they're hiring people, when they're hiring, for example, administrators, they may do better in a different work environment than, say, their licensed assistants who are frontline client-facing salespeople.
Yeah, it's clearly, and a lot of people we've talked to see September as the kind of the next change in society. So we'll all see. I wanted to find out about this because I know you've had so many challenges, like everybody. I mean, there was no training on how to run a major corporation in a pandemic that I know of. I mean, it didn't exist. So that's something you have to come up with. But what were the biggest rewards in your role as CEO of Royal LePage and Bridgemarq so far? Biggest rewards for you?
You mean overall, not just during the pandemic?
Yeah, overall.
So I'd say it's a big company, right? If you look at our agents, we're over 20,000 now. And if you add staff and leadership, it's around 23,000 people. And when I came on, and most of my senior team has been with me since the beginning of my tenure. So call it 15, almost 20 years now. People I've been working together with, a core of people, and together, that business has tripled. So probably the most rewarding part of this job has been creating the opportunity for people to have rewarding careers. Job creation in general, I think, is one of the understated things in leadership. Because if you're creating good work for people, good work, we're not ants, but we have a lot of ant or bee-like characteristics. I think if you don't have fulfilling work in your life, it's hard to be happy. We all know the story of the trust fund child who really doesn't work because they don't have to. And I think the stereotype has a lot of truth in it. Without contribution, without quality work, it's hard to be happy. Now, some people find that through charitable initiatives. Some people find it through, call it hobbies that become vocations. But if you're lucky enough to find something you love to do for all the hours we spend at life during our adult careers, it doesn't feel like work, does it? It feels like joy. You get a passion that's different from the passion you have of getting together with family or friends or your hobbies. And I know you and I are guys that are always busy and we have hobbies we really enjoy. But the work joy, the joy of career, of being in a job you love is great. So that's probably what I'm most proud of, is that for thousands of people, we've created, I've helped create an environment where they can love what they do.
And I've been to, you were kind enough to invite me to Royal LePage events in the past, and I could see, your relationship with people is great. Particularly like the one, the Western one, where you were dressed up like what you are at the root as a cowboy, and you were dressed up like a cowboy, and they loved it. It's interesting when you talk about the way you help people find success, just by giving them the tools. I think that's what great leaders do. I mean, it's not about me, the leader. It's about helping people improve. And people get that. They understand if you're there for them or not. And I think it builds a real estate company, it builds an IBM, it builds everything if people recognize that you're there for them. And I think if you've come up through challenges on a personal note, personal challenges help you relate to people. I think your point about trust funds, if you've gotten money and you've never had to work for money and you've never had to experience the downs, which there are in life, and the ups, which there are, how do you relate to other people who have that all the time? But anyway, if we keep talking, you're going to miss whatever meeting you have next. I just want to get there. This is like, if we went out, this would be the same conversation. It just happens to be recorded today. So now you talked about traveling across Canada. In one part of this country, you got some nice kisses on the cheek, and the other, you got a straight arm to the chest. I know that you travel, and from a business perspective, it gives you, I'm asking, and I suppose I know this a bit, it's got to give you a different insight when you travel to the East Coast, the central part of the country, and the West Coast. And I know you do a lot of traveling in your job, about how the business is operating. Is that one of the benefits you get when you're doing the traveling?
If you don't love travel, you'd hate a job like mine. I'm actually tomorrow off to Sault Ste. Marie, an actual in-person. It's a big anniversary for the city and for our business there. So we've got MPPs and the mayor, and I'll be giving a speech. A Royal LePager from Ottawa, David Oikel, the president of the Ontario Real Estate Association, will be there. So it'll be a great event. And it's a traditional in-person event. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
In a typical year, I might do 70 flights. That's not during COVID, but if you hate that, you'd hate a job like mine. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
The difference between the way we practice business in urban, suburban, and rural situations or locations is very different. The offices are different. The approach to clients are different. Even the way we leverage technology is different. And it's different in Newfoundland than it is in Quebec, than it is in Ontario, than it is in the prairies or BC. So every part of the country has its flavor and its difference. Even the structure, and you know this, Howard, but a lot of your listeners, particularly from Central Canada, wouldn't. The way commissions work in Alberta and British Columbia is different from the rest of the country. It's historical. The old list price on a fee, on a brokerage fee, is 7% on the first 100,000. And then 3% on the balance. And there's, of course, people who will undercut or provide lower fees from there. So you go, whoa, the average price of a home in Vancouver is $1.5 million. So it's really only 3%. So you're starting with a lower fee in British Columbia, which is our most expensive real estate market in Canada, than you are, say, in the Greater Toronto area. So you have to re-engineer your business, your frontline practice, your brokerage, and the way you deliver services as a national firm by region. And that's fascinating. The accents are different. My French isn't great, but I get to, have the challenge of speaking and giving presentations in French in an important part of our country where 23% of Canadians live. Mm-hmm. So it is a big, fascinating country we live and work in, and certainly enough variety to keep things interesting for this real estate leader.
And I think most people who aren't in real estate, or even some that are, don't recognize that every province has its own regulator and guidelines on how the business operates. There's a national level, Canadian Real Estate Association, but in Ontario, it's the Ontario Real Estate Association, and you probably know all of them because you've been to every province. But if you're an agent in one province moving to another, you have to learn how that province operates. You bring up a good point. In going back to the pandemic, and we did talk about it a bit, but for you personally, what was the biggest challenge? I mean, the business side of it, every business had challenges, but how would you define for you the biggest challenge?
Well, it changed as the pandemic progressed. Certainly, I have never worked harder than I did from mid-March 2020 through probably the end of May. It was 7 days a week. It was up at the crack of dawn and working till late because we did not know when the light would appear at the end of the tunnel. It was terrifying when you have this huge company and all these people and the potential. There was no insight into the COVID catalyst then. We did release at that time a very insightful and one that stood out, I'd say, from the other major forecasters, certainly from CMHC, which blew their forecast, but even the major banks, Bank of Canada, we did predict the flow of the market in 2020 and the lift in the second half. But that didn't mean we weren't preparing for Armageddon. I created a crisis management team, a CMT. We met every single day. It had the key senior leaders in the business. Their participation was mandatory. And every day we went through the list of what we were doing, how we were re-engineering the business to work virtually, how we were supporting our frontline people. And I find, I think this is another thing, when I look back on my career that I was proud about, was how we could share some of our learnings with others in the industry. So we had a WorkSafe program, WorkSafe Royal LePage it was called. I got a call from our leader, our broker owner manager in Windsor, Frank Piner, and he said, my colleagues here, my competitors in the Windsor region don't have anything like this. Can I share it with them? I go, absolutely. This is an existential crisis for the whole industry. So we're in this together. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of sharing and people basically backing each other up. Someone with an immune compromised child who was terrified about showing a property to someone who really needed housing, an agent in their office or their community would step up, show the property, and not even take a referral fee. It was all for one for all. And our role, my role, was communicate, like constantly over communicate, share, innovate, leverage the tools we have, and rapidly develop new tools for the situation. And the industry, the world rose to the challenge. And of course, we had the COVID catalyst, what I called the 3 Ps of the pandemic: puppies, Peloton, and property, as so many Canadians
Right.
looked at their homes
Right.
and saw that they had become their restaurants, their gyms,
Right.
their clubs,
Right.
their movie theaters, their offices, and found their properties lacking. They just didn't fit their needs. The pandemic became one of the most unusual and powerful catalysts for property transactions in our history, and we had to pivot and take advantage of that too. So fascinating time, terror in the beginning, hard work, and it got us and the industry through it, and then into capitalization time. The company will grow in terms of a raw number of net new people in this 18-month period, faster than any time we have in 7 or 8 years. So it really has been a good time for the industry, and those who saw that and were there for their people, they're all benefiting.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. I think that it exposed the best and the worst of people, this pandemic. So I'm just got 2 more questions because I'm going to try to stick to the 30 minutes because I know how busy you are, Phil. How do you see the rest? And you get to ask these questions by all the media, so now you'll get asked by me. How do you see the rest of 2021 in terms of prices for homes and for condos?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start with the latter part first. Condos haven't fared as well as detached homes for many well-publicized reasons. People felt they needed more space and they could work from home, and so they went farther afield. What doesn't get reported on often is that there was already pre-pandemic a mega trend, or maybe 2 mega trends underway that we're seeing that kind of migration from dense urban cores where people were thrilled to live in sexy condominiums in exciting cities, to suburban and exurban, as we call it, Royal LePage, those centers outside of comfortable commuting distance to our big cities. And that was baby boomers finally shedding kids. Took a long time. The children of the baby boomers stayed at home longer than any previous generation. They're finally leaving. Our recent research showed 87% of baby boomers are now empty nesters. So they've looked at their homes. They've been looking at their homes since the middle of the last decade and saying, this doesn't fit my needs now. And it's not a financially driven a necessity for most baby boomers. It's a lifestyle choice. They're looking for a different kind of home than the one they have. So, and many of them, 54% told us this, were looking for homes that were rural in nature, call it recreational or somewhat recreational property. Maybe it's small town. Maybe it is a cottage or cabin on a lake. But that's a big migratory happening. In fact, our research shows 3.2 million baby boomers intend to transact in real estate over the next 5 years. That's a massive number of additional transactions in an already tight market. So that was the one part. The other is millennials. They're growing up. They're having that, not just the first kid, but the second kid. And that's the largest population cohort in Canada. And those people are starting to eye suburbia the same way their parents did, that white picket fence to raise children. So there's a transition in that way. What has caused condominiums to have a real strong, call it second half of the game, second half of this pandemic pandemic era market expanding, is the return of the investor and a class of renters that have had to exit the market over the last year and a half. So who am I talking about? First are those people in hospitality, travel, and tourism that lost their job and are just now getting back to work. Many of them vacated the properties they were living in and moved in with family or friends. They're returning to the market. The second group are foreign students, what we call temporary residents. Canada is the number 3 country in the world to host foreign students, and we have some 830,000 foreign students who will be in Canada. Most of them here by September of 2021, certainly by 2022. They need to put a roof over their head, and most will rent. And then the final group are new Canadians, immigrants. We know from our research that in the first 3 years in Canada, the vast majority rent, and their favorite form of rental is the condominium, again, a source of income for entrepreneurial investors. So condominiums have come back in a big way. Altogether, what we're having is 2020 saw a rise in young people buying because interest rates made things cheaper, and homes did get cheaper for a period mid-year last year, spring and through mid-year. So we had a wave of young people, call it 25 to 35. Some of them got priced out as the market went through. Existing homeowners felt comfortable as vaccination rates rose, and they started mixing in society again and started trading their homes, and that kept the wave of transactions going through the first half of 2021. And it's the new Canadians, the people returning to work, for temporary Canadians, that are going to push much of the final phase of this expansion. So first half of the year, we were looking at close to 30% price appreciation. Unheard of numbers really for a full year. But when the buck stops on 2021, we believe the number will be closer to 16% for the full year 2021. Now, does that mean that home prices are going to drop in the second half? No. And this is something that's important for real estate professionals to understand. There's a difference between absolute price increases and the rate of increase. So if the rate is rising at, say, 27%, and it slows to, say, 5%, and you mix a year of 6 months of 5% with 6 months at 27, on average, prices will still be higher in December 31st than they were on June 30th, but they'll go up very slowly in the second half, resulting at the end of the year in a more moderate mid-teens increase, something we have seen about once every decade. So I'll stop talking because I could go on forever with the numbers. The bottom line is the pace of price increases is slowing. We believe the expansion will continue right through the spring of 2022. So home prices won't back off, but this frenetic, highly supply-constrained market should be more moderate in the coming 12 months than they were in the previous.
So you also answered my last question. Okay, so you're off the hook, Phil. We did it. We did the whole thing. Anybody watching knows that we are friends, and this was a lot of fun for me to have you on. I hope we can do this again in the future. I know you're enjoying your golf. I know you're going to be enjoying getting outside. I know that you travel to visit kids now. They're all over the country. So I just want to wish you well, stay healthy, and we'll get together personally as soon as we can.
Howard, thank you for having me on, and good luck with this. It's an excellent venture, and I think you're very good at it.
Thank you so much, Phil. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye for now. We'd like to thank Phil Soper, and we'd like to thank you for joining us today. And if you enjoyed our podcasts, please like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast network or on our YouTube channel. And to get in touch with us, you can reach us 2 ways. One is by email, info@rewithhd.com, or on our website, rewithhd.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.